Eamon Khan here for Seconds Out, joined by the magic of the internet. They call it Zoom these days, with the Sun's Wally Downes Jr. Wally. Enjoying the Saudi sun?
Yeah, the sun's all right, mate. I think we're missing a few British boxing behemoths out here, the likes of yourself. Louis Hart is a big miss, Declan Taylor. But I've got a wonderful little Irish sidekick called Chris McKenna, who is doing a lot of my transcribing for me, so it's great.
I don't know about boxing behemoth for myself, maybe boxing shrinking violet, but I did a small bit of research on my end before the start of the interview. I checked the ticket sales for the Day of Reckoning, and it seems like it's sold pretty well, with maybe under about 500 tickets left over, with those being the really cheap seats. And I wondered, off of the back of the Fury and Ngannou event and the buzz that had garnered, had the buzz grown for the Day of Reckoning in lieu of that, do you feel?
I'm probably the worst person in the world to ask that, because when we got a coach to Fury and Ngannou at maybe sort of 4 or 5 p.m. local time, it was empty. The whole of Riyadh seemed empty to me, and I didn't know what on earth was going on. But the undercard event was completely sold out, and inside the arena it was completely sold out. And what I've learned since I've been out here is that due to the prayer schedule of the day, most people don't even sort of start leaving their house until maybe 8 p.m. Life doesn't really get going until 11 p.m. Just the culture here is almost nocturnal, largely because, again, the summer is so hot. So a lot of the times you see these incredible buildings and huge roads and everything looks empty, but it's only because, in a typical English narrow little mindset, I get up at 6 and try to be in bed by 10, whereas their life is almost the complete opposite way around. So no idea about ticket sales, no idea about buzz, because in the same way that we judge it by foot traffic at home, are there people in the pubs, are there people walking up Wembley Way? So absolutely no idea, Raymond. Not a clue, mate. But yeah, I'm sure it will be full. I've seen lots of young kids out and about more than I have before, so I think they'll do all right. I'm sure they will.
First of all, look, let's start at the top here. A lot of conversation when it comes to Anthony Joshua, always as is, and the real kind of spotlight has been on his mentality, which includes a trainer switch heading into this fight with Otto Wallin, where a lot stands to be on the line in terms of his wants and desires to become a 3-time heavyweight world champion. Where do you stand on AJ's mentality, as it's been discussed, and this trainer link up with Ben moving forward?
I think when you look at how much he has changed trainers recently, you can't help feel that there must be some instability. I did read a piece this week from someone who reckons that this is the most focused and confident AJ's ever seemed, and I don't think that simply cannot be right when you look at the change of trainers, the media events that he has done just on Wednesday night, when he just didn't want to answer questions. I'm nowhere near close enough to him to worry about his mindset. I did have a very brief, helpful, good chat with him about having a camp at home properly in Watford, not Loughborough, not Sheffield. And he was good on that. He's been good on Miller. So in the 2 minutes I've had with him out here, he was great and helpful with me. He has been short and sharp with most of the other media. Perhaps that's because he's not happy with how, what they've written or broadcast about him in the past, and that's his right. And sometimes I quite admire that when someone takes a stance and says, I'm not happy with what you've done. Tyson Fury's doing it with a different broadcaster at the minute, so I have no problems with that. I just think in terms of his mindset that so much is going on, so much is at stake. And this fight week, I think we spoke about it before, mate, he's got Jarrell Miller in the most derogatory, grubby way, insulting him and criticising him and questioning his mindset and saying that he's a fraud. At the total opposite end of the spectrum, you've got Otto Wallin, who boxed him twice as an amateur, was a friendly sparring partner in 2015. He's had his own psychologist, despite being a relatively small star since, God knows when. I think sort of very early on in his career. So, and he's saying he looks and sees a guy who is changing trainer too much, who doesn't really know who he is. So I guess if he comes through this fight, week when everyone is saying he's all over the shop, he will prove that he absolutely isn't. He will prove that we've all got it wrong. He will prove that everyone who claims to know him so well and inside out doesn't know him at all. So yeah, it's a genuine day of reckoning. It's really exciting. And for British boxing as an industry, mate, Anthony Joshua has carried us all for a long time. So anyone who isn't really backing him and hoping that he pulls it off and comes through and shows everyone that the mental fortitude that he's got, that he's shown for a pretty long time, is still there, then we'll be having a very happy Christmas.
Does he come through it?
Yeah. Wallin has all the momentum, I think. Going to Turkey and beating Gassiev. Yeah, really, honestly, if I think so, yeah, I do. I think, as silly as it sounds for a journalist to say him being short with the media is a good thing, I get the impression that he is turning things down, that he isn't doing stuff. It looks like, Ben Davison is his trainer for this fight. We're not sure if that continues, but Ben Davison could do a million interviews saying how great they're working together. And I think any time any of us have asked for that, he's very politely said, no, we're here to do a job. So it's just business, mate. So yeah, really, honestly, I know he's told everyone enough times he doesn't really like fighting southpaws, but he has just done more or less 2 years. I appreciate a very, very different one in Usyk, but a southpaw nonetheless. So yeah, I don't think you can erase a decade-long career of AJ on this. But yeah, 7 weeks, big test, exciting one.
We won't dissect all the other fights, but I just wondered, do you know what the situation is regarding Otto Wallin and his status promotionally? There is talk of him having future fights, of course, with the Saudis. Or I wondered if Queensberry had him signed or were looking to have him signed promotionally to a contract.
Queensberry have definitely not said anything to any of us out here about having Deontay Wilder signed. I think when Saudi Arabia have made it abundantly clear that they're interested in doing lots of shows here, if you're a free agent, any free agent in any weight division anywhere in the world right now, if you can stay that way, you're laughing then, because Saudi Arabia seem like they're going to invest in the sport more and more and keep fights coming. We know we're back here February 19. It looks very likely we're back here March 9. The Riyadh season closes, but then I think they go into a short, is it a Diriyah season? So these things are going to keep happening. And I'm sure that if Wilder beats Joseph Parker and then goes into an AJ fight, if he wins again, he'll want to keep fighting that here where the money is.
What do you know of that AJ versus Wilder fight? Can you hear me?
Yeah, one second. Just I did see some reports last night that they've now signed another 2-fight deal for America, which I'm not going to get with. I think he's got a really tough fight with Joseph Parker, and then he's fighting Anthony Joshua. So that would suggest that they just signed a 4-fight deal, which to me seems sort of fanciful when they're heavyweight fights and dangerous fights. So yeah, all I look at it right now is that Saturday night is 2 semi-finals. Parker Wilder, AJ Wallin. The organisers, you would assume that Wilder wins one and AJ wins the other. They fight each other, and then who knows? The idea of AJ, it's such an explosive fight with a 30. Wilder might be 39 by then. AJ will be close to 35. The idea of saying that they've signed up for 2 or 3 more fights after that would be speculative, maybe. Yeah, it wouldn't be too exact to me.
Well, we'll be revisiting the Saudi situation going forward, something that won't be revisited, at least for now. The door seems to be shut on Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn, cited as commercial reasons as to the reason for the fallout. I believe Eddie Hearn has spoken to naturally a number of outlets, including Chris Mannix's podcast on boxing, citing those financial reasons about the pay-per-view doing a million buys and such, and the money just not being there, not wanting to lose money further on the fight. But from your understanding, what is the lay of the land as to why the fight fell out?
If it's the biggest fight out there, if it's the biggest fight in British boxing, if Abu Dhabi won it, if Tottenham won it, if it would sell out large stadiums, if it would do a million pay-per-view buys, then how on earth does it not make commercial sense? It's good that that fight is dead because it allows British boxing to move on. Every show, not just matching shows, every show has had that cloud hanging over it. Every interview, more or less with every channel, yours, everyone's, you know, you might get a great interview with a lad, a boy, a male fighter, a female fighter, promoter. Everyone ends on a question about Conor Benn, and that's the headline. And I completely understand why. I work for a tabloid paper, but you know, there have been great shows, great fights, underdog wins, and this news story has clouded over that. So now it's dead. Very happy for it to be dead. Conor's career will continue very soon, I'm sure. Most likely looking abroad. But yeah, I do just think now it's good that it's over. I look forward to maybe quick, you know, it's all come from one side at the moment why the fight is over. Chris Eubank, I'm sure, has been approached by everyone for an interview and has kept a very dignified silence. Sooner or later he'll come out and explain his reasons, and then he might say commercial as well. He might say he didn't offer me enough money, and then if that's what he says, then that will appear strange if it was the biggest fight out there for everyone anywhere, guaranteed to make millions and millions and millions.
Do you feel that the fight was ever really a possibility, considering the British Boxing Board of Control's stance, potential levies that they would place on those who'd be involved should the fight go ahead in whatever form? And, you know, kind of Eddie's was putting himself out there, you know, stating his confidence in the fight, but, you know, in the last week or so, it seemed to be like a soft landing towards the eventual fallout there. But a lot of people within the industry kind of felt that their confidence was going, if not gone, in that fight ever really materializing. But do you ever feel it was on the cards and there could have been a way around plausibly for the fight to go ahead?
Bizarrely, more or less going back an entire year, nothing had really changed from the October Thursday when it was officially cancelled to October last week. Conor had not cleared his name, although he had been cleared to fight. All the other countries that wanted to hold it were still there. You know, in October we were told all this stuff. Other boards were approached last October. Other countries were approached last October, and that was still happening 2 weeks ago. So nothing had changed. So yeah, you know, I read articles where people were saying it's getting announced next week, and then you ring around and you understand that, yeah, to do that, the fight had to happen in the UK, as we know, and there's a great big massive stumbling block in the middle of that, in that Conor hasn't got a license with the board. So yeah, you know, I think for all the reporters, not just myself, it was incredibly frustrating because our desk would be calling us every other day. Oh, you've seen Eddie says the fight's happening, the fight's done, it's Wembley, it's December 23, it's February the 3rd. That's Eddie's job, is to sell his fights, but nothing was changing, mate. The great big roadblock in the middle of that road that was there from October the 3rd or whatever it was, 2022, is still there now. So nothing changed for us, I don't think, for the people that were clawing away at the news all the time. But you know, as every promoter has the right to do, they used media to try and, I don't know, change opinion or perception. And I don't think that really happened in the end. And the board have stood firm, and all those other options that were very heavily explored clearly didn't return enough money to make the fight work.
The story will rear its head again early in the new year with the appeal process moving forward, and a date is set for the new year. Has anything happened in the recent weeks regarding the fight falling out changed your stance on where the appeal decision will go? Do you expect Conor to be licensed after the fact?
I really don't know. I really don't know. Because they could have held on. I do expect Conor to fight relatively soon. So Chris will have to do something else. I saw he was unhappy the other day. He felt that he'd signed up for the Janabek fight. And like we saw, the situation, how much changed, how much the landscape changed after Chris blew away Liam Smith. It changed dramatically. His stock rose hugely. And then Conor went abroad, had his fight. He got a win, but it was a long, arduous win against a small name opponent. And I'm sure Chris then felt the landscape changed dramatically again. So if in January, February, Conor fights and looks sensational, suddenly that landscape changes again. If Chris fights Janabek and loses, the landscape changes again. So it would be good if they just went off, did their own stuff. Conor focused on 147. Chris either got a big money fight with someone or middleweight world title, and maybe they just left each other alone.
Well, there's a lot more on the table, but I'll leave that for another day. I want to end on one final one. That was the silence, sort of half broken, really online in a sense anyway, by Dillian Whyte, who's been absent since his positive test there. Have you had a chance to speak to Dillian Whyte, and is he going to speak relatively soon or return in some form relatively soon in the wake of his developments?
Yeah, I would guess so. We'd heard sort of similar things. They've obviously handled things very, very differently. You know, a blanket silence, and handled their stuff behind closed doors. And how they handle things, you know, when they come back, you know, again, I always see Eddie get asked, have you heard from Dillian? And Eddie's always said no. So, yeah, that will be interesting. He'll have to come back, and if he's cleared to box or has cleared his name, then he'll, you know, as a heavyweight with a fan base and now another layer of story on top of his career, we'll have to see, you know, which promoters want to work with him again. But yeah, you have to do, I mean, look at someone like Jarrell Miller's case, who is found guilty of something. Dillian has not been yet. We've not found out what's going on, but you have to do you have to be guilty of really something bad, and you still get great chances in this sport. So if Dillian can clear his name, I'm sure he'll get lots of opportunities again in this sport and the strange way that it works.